Takuratami has made a limited format for a tournament in Japan which gives 1 point to your opponent for every limited, which really just means overpowered part you have in your deck, which includes Beyblade X's heavy attack blades, Cobalt Drake, Phoenix Wing, and the new meta stamina blade Wizard Rod, along with Ratchet 960 and 2 stamina bits, Ball, and Orb. This is bad. This is an admission from the developers that they made an unbalanced game, but the format also shows that they understand the issues and they care about how players experience the game, but this is absolutely not how to improve it. This is forcing a literal handicap to the players that use these parts, which is not how real competitions are conducted. This is the equivalent of a fighting game developer making an overpowered character and saying, they really strong, so we're gonna make them 25% health. Which would be laughable since fighting games are won by interactions, and in modern fighting games, you can lose from one interaction at 50% health, so the matches would end faster and be less entertaining, just like with X's limited format where you can use 3 limited parts and automatically your opponent has 3 points, so 1 loss and the match is over, which isn't fun or interesting and gives both players less experience. You might as well just ban the parts since this format punishes you for using them. Also, they put Ball and Orb as a limited part, which are the standard stamina bits, so like developers.
Developers. Yes!
Do you hate stamina? I've played X for a long time and I've launched so many times at home that my stadium is quite banged up. After all my time playing at home and at tournaments, I don't think stamina was overpowered until Wizard Rod released. I've won a tournament pre-Rod with Phoenix Swing stock, which I will admit is meta, Shark Edge stock, and Wizard Arrow 60 high taper. And my final opponent was a full stamina team and I beat them greatly by getting KOs, so I think the tri-attack system works, but defense types absolutely need some real improvements. Their pick rate is terrible in tournament, and in testing they struggle, the struggle is real. Now currently what seems to have made the developers make up this lame format is Wizard Rod, the current juggernaut of Beyblade X, and I'll say how good the part is. Like, they would have to purposely make a better stamina type to beat this. Wizard Rod is overpowered because of 2 things, its weight and diameter. It's the heaviest stamina blade at 35 grams, which isn't the heaviest blade because heavy attack blades are 38 grams, but weight is more powerful for stamina types. Also, Wizard Rod is heavy to the point that it has defensive value because it makes it harder to knock out, which makes the normal attack types have a harder time beating it. So right now, if you're running attack, you need to be running the heavier attack blades to have the best chance at beating it. I also think they need to make stamina blades have the lowest weight because I've noticed that attack types can outspin stamina if they knock them around enough to drain their stamina, but with Wizard Rod that's pretty impossible, it's just too heavy. Now for diameter, it's the widest blade yet, and combined with its weight, it creates a very strong centrifugal force, which simply means spin force, which is more stamina. And if you go to a tournament, you'll see it's undeniably the stamina demon of Beyblade X, and you'll regret not using it as you watch it devastate your deck. Also, its weight is heavy enough that not only is it the best stamina blade, but it's also the best defense blade. Trust me, I've tried it in tournament, put that big circle on a needle and watch it be stronger than Knight's Shield and the new garbage UX defense type Shinobi Shadow. I don't know how or why they did it, but they made Shinobi Shadow weigh 28 grams, which is the lightest Beyblade X blade, besides maybe like the plastic gen crossovers, and people have already shown that Metal Needle damages the stadium just like Metal Sharp for Metal Fight. TT, what are you doing? It's like you're not learning from your past mistakes. Wizard Rod reminds me of 2 stamina types, Hades, Kerbex, and Twisted Tempo from Metal Fight, which are a part of the Maximum series where Kerbex was the widest blade while Tempo was the heaviest, and there was an official world tournament where they weren't banned and the stadium's favorite stamina type, so everyone was running Kerbex or Tempo stamina. Just imagine how fun these tournaments were. You would think Beyblade would have learned a lesson from this, like stamina types should not be wide or heavy, but here we go again. To be fair, Metal Fight was a long time ago where the only goal was to sell a product, but apparently Beyblade Burst also had this heavy stamina issue. Beyblade X is advertised to be the most competitive era of Beyblade, and so it's also advertised to be for all ages, so some serious game balancing needs to be expected, but so far this era is feeling quite sloppy, with some parts being bad but could be good if they were improved upon, and as we know some parts are too good, which makes past releases irrelevant, and at the speed releases are coming out, everything up to a certain point was planned to release, but if you're gonna have this planned conveyor belt method of release, then all parts need to be good and fair. If you don't, then you're gonna disappoint customers. Think of Rhino Horn and Viper Tail, blades that suck for the typing they're supposed to be but are better used as attack types, and if I was a Beyblade X developer and I wasn't being rushed to release something, these blades would not be released in their current state. Also, people were wondering if the Hasbro exclusives were going to be better versions of the bad blades, but Zenki has gotten them early and has been showing them off, and he's not saying anything good so far. They seem to be even more mediocre. Now back to the format. It's dumb. I don't think many bladers are going to be happy about it, especially when it punishes you for just running stamina unless you use gear ball or disc ball, but you know we wouldn't need to have this silly format if the X developers did what fighting game developers do. Balance the game. If a fighting game developer thinks a character is too strong, then they have to change them to be more fair by making them worse, and in a game like Beyblade, game balance is crucial for player enjoyment and competitive diversity. No one wants the rest of their tournament days being a bunch of wizard rods and phoenix wings over and over again, or something even worse in the future, so the developers will need to remake blades to balance them, whether it's making them weaker or stronger and then banning the previous version. Obviously, I feel the Beyblade X developers wouldn't do this because it's very demanding, but they're trying a format which shows they care about this game's balance to some degree, and Beyblade Gen stay around for a while, and for me personally, I wouldn't mind if X stays being produced forever, as it's the most fun in Beyblade I've ever had, and I feel like it could be the most solid competitive gen if they put in the work to balance the parts. But if they don't do that, I'll explain a new format I think X tournaments should be played with, and then I'll give some measured thoughts on how a Beyblade X rebalance should be conducted. The format, Beyblade X Siege. Inspired by the shooting game Rainbow Six Siege, where in the ranked mode each team gets to ban a character, so in Beyblade X Siege each player gets to ban a blade. Because 2 blades will be banned in a match, each player will have to have at least 5 blades to participate. Additionally, in the spirit of TT's limited format, penalizing you for using 960 ratchets, all 9 ratchets will be banned. Clearly, 9 ratchets are made to not burst, but bursting is an important part of the game since it can decide a match, and they help attack types be viable against stamina, so I find them to be unfair to the game. In a tournament match when the 2 players meet, the one who wins the stadium roll will choose to ban a blade from being used in the match, and then the other player will do so. Then both players will share 20 seconds to make their 3-bay deck in secret and choose their deck's lineup. When both players say they're ready, the match will begin. If either player's deck is not ready when the 20 seconds have ended, the ready player will automatically win the match. If both players' decks are not ready when the 20 seconds have ended, a die roll or coin flip will decide which player wins the match. This is a summary of the format, and of course you can only have 1 copy of a part in your deck. Also, there's a new TT rule that says if a player self-KOs before the base clash, the other player will gain a point, and the match will be a redo, and I think this is silly. In video games like Apex Legends, if you fall off the map you die, unlike Mario Kart where you just get lifted back onto the map, and X is supposed to be a more competitive gen, so I urge them to retract this rule. Now, my thoughts on the current issues with the game balance, and then I'll say many thoughts on how the game should be rebalanced. Issue 1. Defense types are not threats. They're all easy to knock out, they struggle to outspin attack types, and they can easily burst, which are all ways we expect defense types to behave in the opposite way, since they're supposed to counter attack types. And in tournaments, 9.5 times out of 10, a player won't even have any defense parts in their deck. Issue 2. Heavy blades are meta. As said before with Wizard Rod, heavy blades are harder to knock out and outspin because their weight adds stamina, defense, and attack, which currently makes normal attack and normal stamina blades obsolete. I think the term I've heard before is called weight bully, which is currently happening now. These meta blades are polluting the game, They're like an invasive species and they're making tournaments less diverse, but that's what happens when you purposely make something overpowered. It becomes the majority of what's being used no matter what game it is. So it's surprising that they even made a limited format when they could have just made properly balanced parts. Like, these parts would have to been made purposely this strong because they wanted them to sell well instead of prioritizing game balance, but I don't think they need to make parts overpowered with weight for them to sell well. If I want a part, then I'll buy two because I want one for practice and one for tournament use. And in this gen, parts get battle damage and eventually break, so when one of them break, I buy another. What Takuratami should be valuing in Beyblade X blade design is shapes. The shapes of blades are the main factor in their strengths and weaknesses, so for example, Dran Sword and Shark Edge are both attack types, but Dran Sword's shape is more defensive at the cost of having less attack than Shark Edge. Shark Edge's shape has more attack at the cost of it having more recoil, which gives it less stamina than Dran Sword. So every shape has its strengths and weaknesses, which will determine what Bay has an advantage over the other in a matchup. So Takuratami, just make good blade shapes and give them a sensible weight and they'll sell. It's that simple. Making blades overly heavy will just break the game and narrow the competition. Now for the rebalance portion of my yapping, as you can tell I value game balance a lot because I like competitive games, so I play a lot to think of this game in a scientific way, to see how parts behave and interact with each other in battle, which helps me brainstorm how to improve the game's balance as a whole. This part of the video is my dream for how this game should be changed, so it will have many demands for game balance changes with explanations for the Beyblade X developers. If we want the game to be rebalanced, parts will have to be redesigned, because right now, it's clear X wasn't thoroughly tested, since every defense type released so far is bad, and many other blades turned out being underpowered. So I'm going to lay down what I think the groundwork should be for a Beyblade game balance. The goal of Beyblade balancing is to make the tri-attack system work, and I think I should explain what it is because I do hear questions like, what do defense types do? Attack types have powerful movements and jagged blades that give them the ability to deal strong attacks to knock out and burst stamina types at the cost of having low stamina. Stamina types have smooth blades and smooth ball shaped bits to have high stamina and to outspin defense types at the cost of being easier to knock out. Defense types have blades that are a mix of smoothness and jaggedness and have needle-shaped bits in order to be the hardest to knock out, so attack types have a harder time at knocking them out, and defense types can counterattack and outspin attack types at the cost of having less stamina than stamina types. So in essence, Beyblade is a rock paper scissors type of RPG, where each typing exists to defeat the other. But because defense was designed so poorly, people largely don't care about them as they're so bad they're a waste to use competitively. And with the rise of heavyweight attack and stamina blades, defense blades are becoming even more obsolete. So to make the tri-attack system work, lots of part redesigns will need to be made to properly rebalance the game, so some parts will be upgraded and some will be downgraded, and then the previous versions will be illegal, just like when fighting game characters are rebalanced. Some of Zenki's thoughts have inspired this portion of the video, so thanks Zenk. The most important thing in Beyblade game balance, blade weight. Weight is an inherently powerful thing in Beyblade as it helps all three types perform, so it must be fairly distributed to have a solid game balance, so I think the weight range for a blade should depend on its typing. So there should be a weight class system. Currently, usually stamina blades have the lowest weight, defense blades have a little more weight, and attack blades have the highest weights. But in my weight class system, stamina blades still have the lowest weight, then attack blades have a middle of the road weight, and then defense blades are the heaviest. A rough average weight of normal attack types, which would be Dran Sword, Dran Dagger, and Shark Edge, is 34.5 grams, so the weight range of attack blades should be 34.5 to 35 grams. These blades are the middleweight class, so they should remain unchanged if the game is rebalanced. Wizard Arrow is the best normal stamina blade, and it has a rounded weight of 32 grams, so I think stamina blades should be 33 to 33.5 grams, and this weight range would actually buff Wizard Arrow. Defense blades will have the weight range of 35 to 35.5 grams. How will this system work for balance type blades? The weight of balance blades will be determined by the degrees each typing is present in their design. For example, Unicorn Sting's main strength is stamina, with a secondary strength of attack, so its weight should be on the lighter side, but a little more heavy because its secondary strength is attack. Another example is Leon Claw. It's a mix of attack and defense, so its weight should be between the attack and defense weight class. This system should be followed like a law for Beyblade design. This all will of course require the heavyweights of Beyblade X to be remade to be balanced with everything else, which means their weight and size will be reduced. Here's an image of how every Takuratami blade's weight will be affected by this system. As you can see, many blades will be improved, so this is very exciting, but I didn't add any of the crossover blades because I just don't care about them. I don't think fundamentally, I don't think their designs work with the game. I think this weight system will ensure defense blades have the weight they need to maintain spin power to outspin attack types, and also so that they are harder to knock out. If you think about it, defense types are a type of balance type because they're a mix of stamina and attack, so that they can counterattack attack types and outspin them. An additional improvement that should be given to defense is giving burst resistance to defense type bits. You've probably seen attack types bursting defense types many times, but if defense is supposed to counter attack types, then it should also be harder for defense to burst to attack. So I think defense should have a middle of the road amount of burst resistance. So stamina bits still have low burst resistance, defense bits have a new medium burst resistance, and then attack and balance type bits still have high burst resistance. And these rules will require Hexa to be given medium burst resistance, because currently it has high resistance, because TT for whatever reason counted it as a balance type bit, probably because it was released with Hell's Hammers. But this is clearly a defense bit. It's a flat cone, so it's a high stamina defense bit. It's just a weird wide defense from Metal Fight. Oh, and a last bonus part change I thought of, give Gear Ball medium burst resistance. It's a stamina bit with a higher ability to attack from the X-Rail, but because it has low burst resistance, it has a high risk of bursting from the impact of its own extreme dash attacks, which has made the part pretty forgotten by players. A real last super bonus part change, improved Spike. It's basically a bottom tier bit, and I think that's because of how bad it maintains its balance. I think Needle and Hexa perform far better because their cone is wider, which helps them maintain balance, so I think Spike should have a wider cone. Now, how could Takuratami roll out all of these changes? As unlikely as this sounds, they need to pause the release schedule, and they need to redesign whatever is supposed to release in the future so they can conform to these balance changes. Because right now, it feels like things are just going to get more unbalanced subtly and slowly, or we're just going to get some more bad releases, and you know how it is currently. I'm okay waiting a while for the developers of a game I like to make the game better, as game developers do. We already have enough products to be satisfied with while they do this. I would love a remade Night Shield, Night Lance, Viper Tail, Rhino Horn, and even a balanced Wizard Rod, and I'm willing to wait for it because I love the concept of Beyblade X, but the current game balance is bad, so if it was seriously rebalanced, then it would be my favorite game ever. These changes are only affecting blades, defense bits, and gear balls, so you could make a balance patch release line that sells the new blades and bits together between a few packs. The blades that come with a signature bit like Phoenix Wing with Gear Flat or Wizard Rod with Disc Ball should be in the same pack. The remade parts should also have some indication that they're new, so they're distinguishable from the old parts. Let's go through some examples of how these blades should be redesigned. Night Shield. My heaviest copy is 32.60 grams, but with the weight class system it will gain almost 3 grams to be a little over 35 grams, so it's better at taking hits and outspinning attack types. I think Night Shield's counterattack regions also need to stick out a little more because I feel like current Night Shield is just a lame stamina blade. Making the counterattack regions more aggressive is also very important because with Night Shield's weight increase, we wouldn't want it to become the next Wizard Rod. Viper Tail. It was advertised to be an anti-stamina stamina type to counter Wizard Arrow, but they made it too aggressive to maintain its own stamina, so people used it for attack and defense. So, to fix it, lengthen its smooth regions, and then the jagged regions need to be shortened. Also, tilt the jagged regions more inwards so it causes less recoil to maintain its stamina even better while still delivering small attacks to be anti-stamina. A final change is lowering its weight to conform to the weight class system, since currently its weight is 34.65 grams, the weight of an attack type. Rhino Horn, a defense blade with the exact opposite issues that make Wizard Rod overpowered. It's advertised to be very small to be a compact defense blade, but the concept just doesn't work in Beyblade X, and probably in Beyblade period. It makes it easier to knock out and it loses stamina faster because it's fairly aggressive and it doesn't have that sweet powerful spin force Wizard Rod can make with its big diameter, so make it wider. Its weight is also 33 grams, but with the weight class system it will increase. Wyvern Gale. It has to be more offensive. It comes with Gear Ball, which is better at performing extreme dashes, but if the blade has bad offense, then it can't capitalize on it. Its shape leans heavily on stamina, but Wizard Rod is the king of stamina, and even if Wizard Rod was remade to be smaller and lighter, it would still beat Wyvern Gale, so you have to make it more aggressive to stand out and do its job better. Its weight will also be increased. Wizard Rod. I think it should be the king of stamina still, but Takuratami went overboard. You can't have a stamina blade being the best defense blade. This blade needs a downgrade in its weight and diameter. Heavy attack blades. Currently, with every attack blade release after Dran Dagger or the special release Phoenix Feather, we've been seeing attack blade power creep. Now attack blades are slightly larger and majorly heavier, now with Phoenix Wing, Dran Buster, Tyranno Beat, and even the first heavyweight, Cobalt Drake, and there's no sign that this trend will end. But you know, I like Dran Sword and Shark Edge. I think these blades should be models for how attack blades should be designed in terms of fairness. So for the heavy attack blades, shrink them to have a normal size like Dran Sword, and make their weight align with the weight class system. Also, my final long opinion about Beyblade X game balance I thought of, which some of you may find weird or make sense. I don't think ratchets should have different heights. I spent a lot of time thinking about how ratchet height affects the game. At first I thought maybe there was a tri-height combat system. I thought the 70 ratchets beat 60 ratchets because the small height increase would have a punching down effect. So a 70 ratchet could outspin and be better at knocking them out. And then 60 ratchets can counter 80 ratchets by getting under them, and then 80 ratchets can punch down on 70s. It seemed like it worked in private testing, but when I took a full 70 ratchet deck to a tournament, because I knew the majority of people are using 60, my bays were bursting so much. A fellow blader with the channel Bay Fades also pointed out something to me on the Beyblade X product boxes. On the back where it shows the Bay stats, it shows 5 bars on the height section, and each bar represents a height, which means eventually, if nothing changes in TT's product schedule, we will be getting a 50 and 90 height ratchet. We already know how bad 80 is, so do y'all think 90 will be any better? My 70 ratchet deck kept bursting to 60 ratchets, so when 50 releases, it will just replace 60. After all of these observations, I think ratchet heights are absolutely useless variation that gives you a disadvantage if you're not using the shortest one. I think Beyblade X should abandon ratchet heights and just make 60 the universal height. For you guys that are very experienced in X, tell me what you think. Also, 9 bump ratchets should be illegal. I believe ratchets should have reasonably shaped bumps so they can burst. And as everyone was saying, 4 bump ratchets are bad. Their bumps are not smooth, which makes them the easiest ratchet to burst, and besides 960, they have the lowest weight, so they are the worst 60 ratchet. So please, make it heavier, and give it better bumps. It could be released with a new Hell Scythe, since Hell Scythe is getting a weight increase according to the weight class system. The only height variation I still value is bit height. I feel like high bits punch down on mid bits, which I and others have seen in tournament with high needle, and in testing my stock Dran Sword was having a hard time knocking out Hell Scythe 60 ball, but when I put high taper on Dran Sword, it all of a sudden was knocking it out way more. I think low bits can undercut high bits, and then mid bits can punch down on low bits. If Takuratami makes all of these changes, then I think Beyblade X will be the best it can possibly be. Defense types will be competitive threats, heavyweights won't exist to be meta, and mini blades will be upgraded, which will make competitive teams so much more diverse. And finally, Gear Ball will be cool. If they do this right, meta itself theoretically won't exist in Beyblade X, since the weight class system will ensure every typing has a suitable weight to counter each other, so winning comes down to how each player launches, and the Bay vs Bay matchup, which is where the game balance part of the game should work. All of this would be a lot of effort from Takuratami and Hasbro, but you can't lie, these changes would probably be the most exciting hype thing for Beyblade X ever, and it would benefit the game by miles. Changes like this is the equivalent to a video game having a major update, and I would buy all of the remade parts. If you love my rebalance proposal, then make this video known to Takuratami. You can share this video under the post of the official Japanese Beyblade X account and tell them that this video represents your thoughts and you want this to be the future of Beyblade X. If Takuratami really cares about improving the game, then they can't just make formats that punishes players. They have to do what competitive game developers do: recognize the game's imbalance and correct it. Thanks for watching.